All right. This is Anthony Johnson with Delve Risk. I'm here with Dani Woolf from Audience First. And today we're going to be delving into buyer insights with Audience First. But before we do that, like Dani, I know we talk all the time. Who the heck are you? So for people to know.
Well, first of all, I love being here, and I'm glad we're finally doing this. We do a lot of behind the scenes
Late night
ranting. Yeah, and oh my God, you got to take a look at this. But I'm glad we're doing this recorded and sharing this with the audience. But a little bit about me, Dani Woolf, CEO and founder of Audience First. We're a qualitative buyer research agency. Wow, I've been in tech marketing in the B2B space for almost 15 years. 6 of those years in the security industry, and I love it in this industry. I've worked for some pretty great startups, growth stage startups, and started Audience First, about 2 or 3 years ago? I don't even know at this point. And that shift from working in-house as a B2B marketer in security to running a qualitative customer research agency stemmed from a frustration, primarily because I wasn't getting promoted. I didn't understand much about my audience, and I was expected to 2x, 3x growth without understanding my audience. I mean, how do you do that? Yeah. Right? It got to a point where I burned out, and you know, to add salt to that wound, right at the burnout phase, I pissed off a buyer, and I was like, okay, we can't do this anymore. Something's got to change within me. That's when I started, talking to customers more regularly, started learning about how to interview cybersecurity practitioners, really took an empathetic approach to their roles and their lives, and it changed my life. Let's just say, yes, I've created, a company and I've connected with some pretty cool people, but it's changed the way I see marketing and sales in the B2B space, specifically in security. And I'm a much better marketer, a much better salesperson, and a much better individual human being at that. I think that shift has allowed me to become a lot kinder. And I think in kindness, there's huge power.
Yeah.
So I know it sounds a little floofy maybe, but I really believe that.
I mean, I think that we deal in a world of so many like technical bits and bytes that we try to pretend that the empathy isn't a factor, right? And it really, really is. So it's just a really, really fascinating, piece, and I respect that. So thanks, Dani. A little bit about myself. I've been in cyber for about 25 years. Actually, kind of on the inverse, right? So practitioner for almost my entire career. For my entire career, actually, CISO at a bunch of large financial service institutions like Fannie Mae, JP Morgan, the Corporate Investment Bank, Cap One, et cetera. As deputy there, in GE Treasury. But my life has been on the practitioner side, and then 4.5 years ago, I moved into what I guess now is officially I would call MarTech. So building market research and helping sales and marketing teams really better understand their buyers. So that's probably why we spend so many random nights just up on Slack and then, hey, let's hop on a call and talking. So there are some questions that we've been talking back and forth about. And I want to make sure that we can kind of like just chew on them a little bit here. And sometimes I wish we would have recorded some of our previous chats, because I leave and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so good, right?
It was so raw and so real. Like,
it is.
Nobody else is telling it that way, right?
Exactly. So from your vantage point, you talk with sales, marketing team, buyers. How do you think sales and marketing is changing? Either like right now and then even over maybe the last few years and the next couple of years. How's it changing?
Okay, I got to take a deep breath because there's a lot here. But I think it took me some time to think about this as I was preparing for this conversation, and there are a few things that stand out to me from assessing the market, talking to marketing and sales professionals, and also working as a marketing and sales professional as well, I think that content is still king, but there have been a lot of shifts to how content is created, how it's consumed, and the value that it provides for B2B buyers, right? Have you ever heard about the phrase "content is king"?
I've heard it, but explain it to me.
Yeah. So content obviously is a great way to create value for customers. It's an easy, like a low barrier to connection as well. I think what's changed in the past, 4 years up until today, or let's just even say 5 years, 10 years, the type of content that buyers are trying to consume is shifting to short form videos, longer form podcasts. I think the glaring insight that I've gotten from practitioners in security is, let me consume content when I want it and how I want it, right?
Yeah.
You think of how practitioners are functioning. They're busy, they're behind the keyboards, they're traveling, they're in their cars. And so that traditional white paper, though still valuable, isn't as accessible to the average practitioner than, a podcast in their car, or when they're on the treadmill, or, a quick reel on LinkedIn that gives you the key insight or the golden nugget, right? People want to pick and choose how and when they consume the content. And yes, content is crucial. Content is king. But distribution, this is another thing. Distribution is queen, and she wears the pants. Blogs are not dead, but they are completely redundant. Marketers, I see marketers and salespeople now leaning more into creating content with the community and in the peer communities, those trusted spaces where they can engage with the potential buyers and create that value, teach them something new, which is another insight. The second thing is personal brands are increasing. Personal brands of professionals and go-to-market teams in organizations. People trust people, especially in the B2B space. They don't trust logos off the bat. They trust the people, then by extension, the logo. Your people are your brand. I think that's becoming a powerhouse strategy. More marketers and sales professionals understand that, and they're getting better at marketing themselves, at having an opinion and distributing that opinion into channels that matter, peer communities, LinkedIn, sometimes Twitter, Reddit threads. The third is that I think, and this is really exciting, I think more marketers and salespeople are becoming more focused and understand that there's a shift in buying behavior.
What do you mean? How the buying behavior is shifting?
Well, people are dynamic. Buyers move, right? It's not... They're understanding that we can't only rely on the persona card. We have to understand individual human beings, right? Because we have feelings, we have emotions. B2B buying purchases are emotional, though there's some logic to it. It's deeply emotional, especially in the security space. Yeah. And I'm seeing a shift in understanding, in mindset, and in understanding in the average cybersecurity marketer and sales professional, that they understand that there's a shift in that buying behavior, right? And they're adapting those strategies to align with the dynamic nature of the human being and the evolving behaviors of practitioners, which is something that I didn't see 10 years ago as much as I see today. It's more prevalent. And I think that's key here. I don't think it's enough. I think there's a shift, though. I'm starting to see it, which is exciting. And then the fourth is obviously, AI, the elephant in the room. Everybody talks about AI. I've been, pessimistic about it for some time, but if you're not using AI every day, are you really a sales and marketing professional in B2B? Like, I don't know. But I think more so than ever, we're seeing more efficiency in automation. We're seeing more efficiency in our workflows, better buyer and competitive intelligence, enhanced data analytics, I think faster sales forecasting, just better decisions being made, and better content being made quicker and at scale. Though there's a catch, like you can't only rely on AI. There has to be guardrails. There has to be lane lines. There have to be the human touch to it. But I think the change here is.
Let me press on that, because I think, and I would submit, that leadership in cyber vendors, buyers, investors, they have the expectation that teams are more efficient. They have the expectation that AI, automation, efficiencies are going to be coming, or they should be realized now. They have the expectation that content should be maybe more dynamic and faster and higher quality. I don't know that I've seen that yet, though. Like, I don't know that I've seen the marketing teams really using these new and emerging tools and embracing them in the way that they should, right? Like everyone talks a good game, and then you're like, okay, well, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh yeah, you see, we use ChatGPT to write that paragraph. I'm like, then how was it? They're like, yeah, it wasn't so good, so we just like wrote it ourselves. And I'm like, oh.
So 100%, and that's what I was going to add here. Like, there's the catch, right? You have the tools. It allows for more efficiency, and I've seen some teams become more efficient. I've become more efficient. However, we haven't mastered yet how to really utilize these tools, really learn, because it's just we've been flooded, and there's this shiny, tool syndrome where we're like, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that, I'm going to use this, I'm going to use that, but then we really don't master the tool, right? We really don't maximize the use of it. We don't understand the use cases. We don't understand how it operates, and so we don't really get the maximum ROI. But I do see that there has been increased efficiency. We're just not utilizing it to the maximum.
So here's my perspective on this. I think the earlier and smaller companies who have to use the tools, right? They like as a small company, like, and I mean, you haven't raised $10 million, right? You have. Mm-hmm. You're bootstrapped, you've raised a couple $1 million maybe, you have a very small team, you have to get creative, you have to use these tools to have the efficiency. And I actually think that the larger incumbents don't have the live or die or the change or die mentality, because they can augment they still have big teams and they still have lots of money, and so they don't have to change as fast. So I think we're going to see the smaller and more nimble companies adapting, and then all of a sudden there's going to be a gap of these orgs are way more efficient. They know their buyers. They know X, Y, or Z, right? It's the same thing for us. Like, our customers are targeting large enterprises, right? Trying to do sales and marketing to large enterprises. And while we have some very, very big, large companies that have cybersecurity sales and marketing teams, the most active ones are on our platform that use our research are the small to mid-sized ones who view it as a change or die. Like, I got to be scrappy. We got to know our customers better, our prospects better. And then you have the really big incumbents who are like, we've got 40 people to kind of throw at that, so we'll get to it, right? And that's where I see the AI. I think the AI adoption starts small, and then maybe the big companies hire those users, marketing leaders, sales leaders to kind of bring that in. But you're going to get this culture jolts, I think.
Yeah. I think that also I think the way those types of companies measure things too has an impact on the way they do things as well. Yeah. So like the smaller companies, more nimble, more agile, who need to rely on tools for efficiency, though they're expected to measure things a certain way. And correct me if I'm wrong, or if something doesn't make sense, just let me know. But this is kind of my thinking, and from experience as well, working in very small companies, working in a growth stage, and also I haven't been in scale ups, 1,000 people, but let's say like 200, 500 employees. It's not a small startup, But when you work with a large organization and your go-to-market team, it gets complex. Things slow down. Also, with those huge companies, the expectation to do things a certain way,
Yep.
status quo, in my opinion, the way we measure things in the larger companies, that's not the way we should measure things in some of those smaller early stage and growth stage companies. And that's where I think a lot of change needs to happen as well. So what I don't see happening quickly in terms of sales and marketing change is measuring what matters, right?
Yeah, I love that
not
you
the number
that.
of leads.
Well, so I was doing an interview with Mark Van Zadelhoff, the CEO of Mindcast, and they're a customer, which is great. But we were talking about I think the question was something around like, what's the difference between sales and marketing at the board level? And he made this really interesting observation. He said that marketing teams often talk about the level of effort they gave on something, right? They're like, we sent out this many campaigns, we hosted this many dinners, we sponsored this many events, and they talk about the level of effort. And he expects and thinks that marketing teams should be talking more about the output of that, right? Now, does that mean it's an MQL? Does it? I don't know, right? Like, we didn't get too deep into it, but he emphasized that as a seller, it's hard. You can't be like, well, I made 900 calls. Like, everyone's like, okay, but how many did you get? Like, how many meetings booked, right? Because understanding the metrics that matter, just like you said, I think is a really, really important piece. And as you get to be bigger companies, they have kind of like more space to kind of put stuff under the rug, right? Like, oh yeah, well, we got to fill the slide out. Like, make sure the slide looks complete, as opposed to, is that something that really, really matters, right? How do marketers? I know this is kind of off the rail a little bit, but like, how do marketers, or how should they think about like metrics that matter?
Quality of prospects, not quantity. Quality of the conversations, not quantity of conversations. How does the brand image resonate with the buyers? Not just from a logo perspective, our logo here, but the actual people representing the brand goes a long way in whether or not a customer is going to work with you or not. And advocacy, like how strong is the community of supporters around the company's mission? What is the company's mission? Do I understand the company's missions? So maybe not always quantitative metrics, but those qualitative metrics are so critical. And it's hard to shift that the way you think of those measurements, because how do I measure that? Like, how do I assess that and share that with the board and with the CEO and with the CMO? Like, how do we measure it back to the dollars, which is like the way people measure ROI? Like, how much money did that bring me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no easy way to measure it.
It's tough. And I think that we've seen measurements and, what's successful, that it seems to ebb and flow. And I want to kind of go back in the not too far way back, but like in 2020, the world shut down, right? And, all these in-person events went away overnight, which is like crazy. And now, like, you're at RSA, right? I was like, RSA, Gartner. RSA felt like a pre-2020 RSA. Like, I was like, wow, there's a lot of energy and people. And I'm not talking about RSA on the floor. I'm talking about like the real RSA, which is at the hotels and everything around, right? How do you see this as we're moving back to more in-person stuff? Like, what's different now? How should sellers and marketers think about this, right? Is it just go to every event you can? Picking, like, what's your take?
I think it's important to be very thoughtful of which events you're attending and what types of events you're attending. Just taking a look at like what's been done and what's being done then and what's being done now. I think that people understand, the great marketers and salespeople understand that there's value in connecting with smaller, more targeted audiences, creating more memorable, impactful experiences, moving away from those badge scans and counting leads to focusing on the quality conversations with the people who matter. Even if they aren't immediate customers, like or target, ideal customers, right? You never know where a conversation can lead you. What with referrals and word of mouth, which is refreshing to see. That being said, I'm still baffled by the amount of money that brands are spending on these huge ass booths. By the way, can I curse in this
100%.
segment? Because it's I'm still baffled by the amount of money they're spending. And the one insight that really is alarming to me in speaking with cybersecurity practitioners is them telling me, well, if you don't invest in it, you don't exist, which I don't agree with. As a brand, I don't agree with. It's unfortunate that some practitioners and buyers think that way.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of the industry, and not just our space. I think it's across different verticals as well.
I think you're right. I mean, one of the things that we emphasize and that our customers are able to do is, using our event calendar, being able to see all the cyber conferences that their competitors have sponsored, right? Because the way it usually works is a marketing team or sales team says, hey, we got this much money to do events or dinners or whatever. What should we do for the year? And then everyone says, well, we did this last year. Let's just do that again. And so they're making decisions based off of habit and comfort, where, a Del Risk customer can say, hey, our competitors sponsored the Minnesota CISO thing every year for the last 3 years. We've never been there. They're clearly getting value. Maybe we should sponsor that one too, where they can make different tactical decisions, right?
Are they getting value though? How do you know that? Well, and is our audience there?
It's
totally
how do you know
that?
Fair
right?
piece, right? But I guess the point that I'm making is that by having more information, you can make a decision of okay, our competitors are focused here. Do we want to go head to head? Do we want to go somewhere else? We want to look at the regional ones, as opposed to just whatever's in the head of your current marketing and sales team because they heard about the one in Chicago. That's great, but did you know about this really cool one that's happening in Ann Arbor that you didn't know about, right? So, because what we've seen is that security leaders, this year in particular, you're seeing T&E budgets just gutted for their teams.
Yep.
Right? For the CISOs themselves sometimes. And so there's a lot more attention, a lot more attendance at these local and regional events, right? Are you seeing the same? That's what we're seeing.
I'm seeing budgets being gutted. Yes, that's a hard yes on that. But I do see more thought and strategy in regional events.
Yep.
But I will emphasize again, which is a shift from 4 years ago, I think, more unique experiences. And I'm saying things that you wouldn't think would be traditionally accepted in this in such a traditional space. I'm doing big air quotes right now because I don't think the security space is essentially a traditional space. I think the space is super creative, and we're working with people who have a very creative minds. I mean, we're working with engineers, with technical people, and so their brain works differently, right? So I'm seeing a lot more thoughtful experiences, really cool experiences that I didn't see before in those smaller, more white glove, regional events, and not necessarily dinners. Well, what did I see just recently? Digital Fight Club, tabletop exercises and CTF challenges, and very practical, tangible things that a practitioner can go away with to apply to the job. That to me is value creation, and that to me is memorable from a brand experience and perspective.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that. I mean, we saw it at RSA. We had a VC. They had Bill Clinton out there, right? Like that was a private invite only type of thing. They had George Bush the year before, right? There are, I think there was a private Alicia Keys concert where they, you know, so I think you're going to see some really unique experiences. I think you're going to see some really unique cyber focused conversations, focused maybe on industry or problem, you know, geo. And because there's this aspect of trying to meet and understand the buyer, which kind of goes into, you know, what the buyers want, what they, you know, what they enjoy. Like we track hobbies, right? Like we track their preferences, priorities. But the way that you and I think about buyer research is different from a lot of folk, right? We look at buyer research from open source, what's their budget, open roles, hobbies, tech stack, all that type of stuff, right? To build out a full account plan for customers. You look at buyer research and having those qualitative, meaningful conversations, right? Really getting into the head, into the persona, like the psychographics, right? What makes them tick? And those are very bespoke conversation pieces that you're, and information that you're able to translate. But that's very different from classic analyst research. How valuable is classic analyst research of where I am an analyst, all ye vendors come to me, I will spend my time with you and then write you on my chart. Like, how valuable is that in 2024, in your opinion?
We don't have enough time to talk about this. Look, I'd be lying if I said there isn't some value in those reports, in the connections. However, when you need to sell a product or a service to a person, the best way to do that is to understand that person deeply, and using a third-party intermediary to get that information is not as valuable as going directly to the source. Let's be real. Like, also, when you look at the traditional analyst firms, the services that they're providing you, you know, you got your reports from, you know, Gartner, Forrester, IDC, and all that kind of stuff, so that you're seen as authoritative, and they do provide some market insights, vendor comparisons, and trends and all that stuff for the customer. But that doesn't help me as a marketer or a salesperson in a leadership position, let's just say, figure out what are the signals, what are the levers I need to be pulling on from an emotional perspective and a human perspective that tie to my value proposition, to my product. And so I think that, you know, these analyst calls and these reports are actually doing a disservice to understanding the customer, again, air quotes here, because it's not as deep as, again, directly going to the source. These are very expensive, you know, making the market understanding and seemingly the buyer understanding less accessible for some of the smaller companies. And that's where those alternative methods go in. Like, I like to call myself a modern buyer researcher, modern customer or a modern analyst, let's just say. Yes, I'm an analyst because I look at people from a different perspective. User reviews, peer recommendations, social media listening, direct conversations with people in the communities. It goes so much farther, in my opinion, than those expensive reports that are saturated with your competitors. And it's not really geared for you, right? And the last thing I'll say is, I'm not so sure how valuable it is to sit in an analyst call with somebody who hasn't been in the role actively. Maybe they have, but not for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, we need to talk to the people who are in the shoes, who are feeling the pain, you know, and it's not as hard or expensive as people think, right?
Yeah.
It just
so
takes a
much
little bit of legwork to learn.
Yeah, there's so much feedback and perspective, opinions that are shared by the CISO, you know, non-CISO, cyber executive decision maker communities in Slack, Signal, WhatsApp, and text, right?
Oh yeah.
And it is just fascinating because I have yet to see feedback align with an analyst report.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it's always fun when, one comes out and then you kind of go look and you're like, hey, what do you think? And it's just a bunch of laughing face emojis of, people claiming or calling out pay for play. Like, it's just this wild ecosystem that I think people are kind of jaded on. But to your point, prior to folks like yourself, Delve Risk, organizations that are focused on deeply understanding the buyer, like that's what they had. It was either that or manually doing it, right? It's and it's tough. So I don't blame them for it, but I think that most everyone knows it's they're not getting the juice for the squeeze.
Yeah, what's interesting in a lot of the conversations I've had with CMOs, like there's no line item for education in talking to customers. There's no line item for buyer research programs. There's market research and analyst, but that's completely like that's not scalable in my opinion. Yeah. Because of what we talked about earlier, the dynamic nature of people, and like the market is different than people, right? And so I can go on for years about this. But what's interesting, actually, by the way, I want to bring it up. I was having a conversation with a bunch of CISOs. Sorry, just a second. I gotta.
No worries.
Jeez, maybe the air conditioning here. Anthony, maybe you can validate this, but in the conversations I've had with a bunch of CISOs and VPs and SOC directors, so on and so forth, when I ask them, well, how do you evaluate solutions? They tell me, I go to that Gartner Magic Quadrant, and then they scoff. Like, so it just goes to show you that, is it really a valid evaluation tool for them? Is that really how you should get in front of buyers in the buyer's journey and understand them? Like, what's your take on that? The Magic Quadrant and all those kind of like reports with the vendors.
Yeah, I listen. I think it's tough. I have a number of friends over at the Big G, so I don't want to talk too bad about them. But I listen. I think you're right. I think, like, as a buyer, I never relied on where someone showed up in a quadrant. What I did use, that to be fair, was did they move in the past year, right? So I didn't look where they were today. I was more interested in like what the trajectory was of them, right? That to be, I found to be pretty interesting, especially if they were kind of viewed as like the most amazing things in sliced bread, and then all of a sudden, 3 years later, they're in the bottom. You're like, oh, I'm not sure what happened there, but I'm not going to just chalk it up to that they didn't spend enough money, right? Like there's a market sentiment of when someone falls from grace. And so I do think that there's value there. There's a lot of talk, though. I want to throw a curveball here.
Let's.
You ready for it?
Let's do it.
Okay. Did you see the hit piece that came out about a VC a couple weeks ago?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, CyberStarts.
I don't want to name the VC, but like, it spawned a lot of stuff, right? And I know there's going to be like I believe there's going to be a Forbes article and a journal article possibly, and whether those come out or not. Like, there's just a lot of stuff going on there. And I saw some conversations where people were like, well, CISOs don't make the decisions. And I'm like, everybody can believe that, right? Because a lot of times security leaders say, you know what, I just asked my team. And I agree. I did that too. Hey, team, what do you think? Look at this, test these things out, right? But at the end of the day, I still believe you have to have the person writing the check that's putting their name on a particular product on board as well, right? And so I think it's getting the team on board 100%, making sure those use cases resonate. But if that security leader, the CISO, deputy, whoever, executive, isn't also bought in, at least on your brand, your direction, it's a crapshoot, right? Like it's going to be bad. But then you get the other side related to the article where people are like, hey, are CISOs and security leaders just kind of running over their team and saying we're going to buy product X because I like the colors or whatever other reason, right? Like, and I've seen it all happen, right? I've seen it all. I see it all happen. What's your take on, one, the space of that topic, and then two, the balance between security leaders delegating the decision versus them being the ultimate decision maker?
That's a fabulous question, and I really appreciate that you asked that, because I have an opinion on what still needs to happen, and understanding of that buying committee and the nuances between those roles is something that I think we still need to work on as an industry and as go-to-market professionals and marketers and salespeople. And I just want to say it's funny because I've been on 3 podcasts this week, and like you're on every single session, this story has come up. So I don't have, I have some opinions. I don't feel comfortable yet to relay those because I'm still processing on how to articulate it. Okay. I know you didn't ask me to tell my opinion, but just FYI, something probably will come from me in the next few weeks regarding that piece.
I'm in the same boat. I'm trying to figure out what the collateral is going to be on potential customers.
I know, right? I know. Like, you got to tread really light. That was a spicy one. But I think so. Let's kind of go back. It's interesting. So if I can recap kind of what you're saying and tell me if I hit this wrong or remembered it correctly. You're saying within the buying committee, the CISO always has to be involved to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Yes.
And ultimately has to sign off.
Agreed. That being said, I think what needs to shift is moving beyond connecting just with CISOs. There's this like notion in our space, you got to talk to the CISO and sell to them. But no, I think we need to get more prescriptive and more specific in connecting with and establishing relationships with the whole buying committee. Understanding, first of all, what that buying committee is per security domain and challenge, and really connecting with the end users who are going to use the product. Because when I speak with CISOs or when I speak with directors or VPs who have a security team under them and are evaluating a solution, the first thing I see them do, which is like fabulous intel, and it's not digital data, it's physical nonverbal language, is I see them on their phones slacking to their team. Hey, and I go, what if you don't mind me asking me, like, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm just, asking my team, have you seen this? Is this something you're evaluating? Is it of interest to you? Do you want to connect with them? Like, are we evaluating this? That to me is fabulous insight, because it shows me that yes, they sign off on the check and make the decisions, but they rely so heavily and trust so heavily their team on validating, making sure that that's of use to them. And is it going to be like, are there requirements even for this kind of tool, right? What is your take on kind of my feedback there, or like in experience? So
here's the analogy that I have come to maybe land on or believe, right? And I'm going to do I'm actually going to record a video piece on it. So this is like a sneak peek on it. Imagine that you, Dani, are a Michelin star chef. You own a Michelin star restaurant, right?
I am. Don't you know that?
Love it, right? Your team, your sous chefs, everybody are like, hey, these are the forks we're going to use. These are the forks, this is the knife, these are the cutlery, and they're good. They have 4 prongs. They have a spoon that has, a good lip, right? Butter knives are good. Everything's good. But it might not have all the things that you want, because that decision of what cutlery you put out represents you. And your investors, as that Michelin star chef, if you put out good quality Target forks and spoons, that's fine. Like your team's like, no, they're functional, they work, they do the thing. But at the end of the day, your investors, your buyers are going to be like, oh, it doesn't represent the staff. It represents Chef Dani Woolf. And you, I think, would say, you know what? I get it. Target meets our criteria, but we do need Table Noir silverware and forks. Like, we need Robert Welch silverware and forks, right? It meets your functional requirement, but the economic decision represents you, and it represents the CISOs when they go to the board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
sense.
this is where you're talking this is where you're saying there's the business decision, and then there's the technical decision. The business decision has huge weight in the evaluation process. 100%. 100%.
Right. And sometimes it's the brand decision, right? Because what ends up happening is a CISO, you go to the CIO or the CEO or whomever, and you're like, hey, we're going to go ahead and buy this product. And they're like, you feel good about that vendor. And you can't just go, my team did a really thorough evaluation, I'm good with it. You have to be like, my team and I, we think this is the right thing, right? And it's tough. I like you have to get the ultimate decision maker on board, because I can tell you, as a buyer in role, I was not going to roll out Target level silverware or Walmart or Kmart silverware at my Michelin star restaurant.
No, 100%. So let me pose a question. I'm going to throw a curveball as well. Let me throw you something. So let's say, you've got a pretty well-known, kick-ass, high-growth cloud security solution on the table who's known for their brand. Choose whoever you wish, AJ.
Sure.
But then you have more niche players that have really good solutions, not a huge brand, not huge brand visibility, but maybe they're better to a certain degree.
Sure.
You're saying that there's value and importance in the brand as well.
Yep.
How do you propose those smaller players, and I say smaller because they're not funded like others, right? They don't have billions of dollars, and they're not making the revenue that others are. Technology is a little bit more niche. How do you propose they get in front of the buying committee and resonate with them if they don't have the weight and resources that others do?
Yeah, I think
that's the question.
I think it's a great question, and I think that fundamentally, as an early stage, mid-sized startup, you have to earn and build a trust level that outweighs the trust level of the big brand, right? Mm-hmm. And you can do that by having your executive team spending time with them, building a relationship, right? Sharing your roadmap, getting their feedback, being responsive to their feedback, right? Demonstrating the innovation and how you're planning and being diligent. The safe answer, right? If someone's out there listening and they're watching and they're a CISO and they're like, hey, I just don't want to get fired. Cool. Just buy all Microsoft products, right? Just buy all Microsoft products. Just buy IBM stuff, right? Hire Deloitte, KPMG, E&Y, right? Outsource everything to one of those. And you're probably not going to get fired because you'd be like, well, listen, Microsoft said to do this and Mandiant said to, I think that, though, if you're being responsible, you need to find the balance between the innovation and the safety in the big, strong brands. Now, the big, strong brands are doing some innovation. They're buying companies. They're doing that. They're integrating those things. I think that's all good stuff. But the smaller firms in more emerging solutions need to figure out, what do you do when Microsoft bought your competitor and suddenly decided to give it away for free?
Yeah.
Right? Free is a hard price to say no to as an enterprise. And the only reason I'm going to go with and pay money when I could be getting it free, covered in my ELA, my E5 license, is because I trust you. I believe in the direction, right? And if I don't have that, I'm just going to be like, hey, man, sorry. They're giving it away for free. They'll give me 2 years for free. I guess I'll, but if I trust you, I'm going to fight for you. Be like, no, this is a better product. This is a better team. This is a better X, Y, or Z, right? So I think that's the challenge that startup founders have, is they have to build, earn trust that outweighs their larger competitor brands, right? But because once you get to a certain size, you convey market trusts, right? And as much as we rally about like the big analyst firms, you show up somewhere in the quadrant, it adds a little bit of trust, right? It adds a little bit of like gravitas, right? Even though everyone wants to say it doesn't. And that's, I think, what they're ultimately paying for. These vendors are paying to show up to kind of get some of that trust to rub off on them.
I rest my case.
Right? Like
you answered it for me. Thank you.
That's exactly right. So, listen, I know there were a ton of other questions that we had. I think we'll have to come back to it at a later point. This has been absolutely great. I just love chatting with you. I'm sure we'll talk about a ton of stuff. We should just take notes of like all our random convos at night, and then like just do this.
Well, we got the joint chat. High thoughts. Just plug them in, and we'll get going.
Awesome. Well, Dani, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. If anybody wants to find you, learn more about Audience First, where and how?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Dani Woolf, DaniWoolf. I'm always there. Took a small break for the last few months, but always there mostly. And visit audiencefirst.fm. It's audience, the number one, st.fm. You can access a bunch of cool and free insights that I've been collecting over the years. I appreciate you, AJ, and everything you're doing over at Delve Risk, and hopefully this session was fun for you. So.
Yeah, I thought this is awesome. And to learn more about Delve Risk, delverisk.com. Follow me on LinkedIn. You'll see me just spanning or all over the place there. And this is awesome. We'll do this again. Thanks, Dani.
Awesome.